Mr. Rat here, and welcome to this film on drawing graphs. Now, the first thing I'm going to show you is how to complete a table of values using your calculator. So, you will be used to seeing questions like this one here, where you're asked to complete the table of values for a certain graph. Now, generally in class, you have probably learned how to stick these numbers into the formula and work out each of these values one by one. Well, there's a calculator hack, and the calculator will produce every answer for you at the press of a few buttons. And the first thing I'm going to do is to show you how to do that. Right. Secondly, we'll use that calculator hack to plot graphs. We'll plot quadratics, cubics, and reciprocals. So that's a quadratic at the top. This one here is a cubic because it's got an x cubed in it, and this one is a reciprocal graph because x is the denominator of the fraction. And when we are looking at plotting graphs, quadratics, cubics, and reciprocals, we'll work our way through some past IGCSE questions. Now, you can download the questions by clicking the link in the description, so I suggest you download these and print them out, have a go at them, either before you watch the film or whilst you're watching the film, if you want to work alongside me. Right, that's it. Any questions, leave them in the comments. Please do hit like if you find this film useful, and who knows, if you make a comment, then the YouTube algorithm will spread the word, and that would help the channel. Right, I hope you find the film useful. Mr. Right here, I'm going to show you how to use a calculator to calculate the y values for this function. So how to use a calculator to fill in these y values here. Now, to start with, we are going to change the mode of our calculator into table mode. So here's my calculator on the left. Hit the menu button. Now, this computer simulator has got many more modes than perhaps your calculator has. For me, the mode I want is number 9, the table mode. For you, and on my handheld calculator, it's actually number 3. But whichever mode it is, it's the one with the picture of a table, and it's the one that's called table. For me, I'm going to press 9 here to go into table mode. You're probably pressing a different number. And here I am in table mode, and the calculator is asking me for my graph here. So I have got x squared plus x minus 6. So I need to be able to enter an x into the calculator. Now, to enter an x into the calculator, I have got a red x here. For me, it's above the close bracket button. And to get at that red x, I use the alpha key. So I need to type in x squared. So I'm going to go alpha, hit the x button for x squared, plus, now I need another x, alpha, the x, minus 6. Right, there is my graph, my equation in the calculator, x squared plus x minus 6. Check it carefully and press equals when you are happy. I don't need to put in a second function, so I'm simply going to press equals on g of x. Now my table range, well, my table here goes from x is minus 3 all the way to x is 3, and it goes in steps of 1. So that's going to help me answer what the calculator wants to know next, which is the start. For me, that's minus 3 equals. The end, for me, that's 3 equals. And the step, for me, the x value is a step in 1s. So I can leave that as it is and simply press equals. And here are my y values. So when x is minus 3, I know that f of x is 0. So in it goes. When x is minus 2, f of x is minus 4. When x is minus 1, f of x is minus 6. Now this is important. Look at row 4. When x is 0, y is minus 6. And that just confirms that I'm doing the right thing because it's already given me a minus 6. Right, let's move down. When x is 1, y is minus 4. And when x is 2, y is 0, good. And when x is 3, y is 6. And there are my y values. So now I could go ahead and plot this graph when I was doing my exam. Before you move on to the next question, you need to make sure you put your calculator back into its ordinary calculate mode. So I'm going to press the menu button and I'm going to choose, for me, it's option 1. I'm sure it'll be option 1 for you too. Option 1 is for calculate. So I'm simply going to press 1, and now my calculator has gone back to normal. And that is how to use your calculator to complete a table of values. Question 1. Right, now I have already completed the table of values from earlier on in this film when I showed you how to use the calculator hack. So I already have these y values filled in the table, and the good news is that that's already 2 marks. So the next part of this question here is to, on the grid, draw the graph of y equals x squared plus x minus 6. Right, so I'm going to plot each of these points. Now, before you start, check your scales. Look out. There is a definite scale warning in this question because the y-axis has a different scale to the x-axis, and we do not want to mess that up. Right, let's plot the points. This point here, that is x is minus 3 and y is 0. So it's the point minus 3, 0. Similarly, the next point, minus 2, minus 4. Minus 2 along and 4 down. Do not mess up your scales. Minus 1, minus 6. 0, minus 6. 1, minus 4. 2, 0. And 3, 6. Okay, so there are the points plotted. Now, there are probably several ways you can lose marks. There are 2 common mistakes to look out for. Do not use a ruler to join these points up, because what we are after is we're after a smooth curve. And that is not going to produce a smooth curve. So do not use a ruler there. Now there's one more very common mistake. Very often we remember to join them up with a smooth curve. Okay. And very often students produce an answer that looks like that. Now, why is that going to lose marks? Well, this particular answer is this curve isn't as smooth as it should be, because do you notice here, the student has drawn that so that it's got a flat bottom there. That is no good at all. The curve needs to be a smooth curve. So if you've got 2 points level, it's going to come like that. It's not going to be flat at the bottom. So I'm going to delete what I've done now and do it correctly. And then when we go through the remaining questions, we won't make such a large point of this. So to get my marks here, I need to join them up with a smooth curve. You might find it easier to turn your page around, and make sure you do not fall into the trap of making the bottom of the curve a flat line. Now that looks pretty good, and that will surely get me the marks I deserve. And that is question 1 done. Question 2. Right, I have to complete the table of values for this curve here, the curve y equals x squared minus 3x plus 1. So I'm going to put my calculator into its table mode, which for me is number 9, and for you may be a different number. And I'm going to insert here the equation x squared minus 3x minus 1 and say equals. When I've checked I put it in correctly. I don't want a second function. My table range is starting from, let's have a look, minus 2, and it's going up to 4, and it's going in steps of 1. So the start is minus 2 equals, the end of my table range is 4, and my steps are 1, so simply press equals, and here are my y values. So I've got 9, 3, minus 1, minus 3, minus 3, minus 1, and 3. So now I can plot my graph. So here we go. Now, do I need to beware the scales? Yes, I do. Scale warning. You've got a different scale on your x-axis than you do on your y, so be careful. Right, minus 2, 9 is up here. Minus 1, 3. 0, minus 1. 1, minus 3. 2, minus 3. I'm going to need to be careful of that flat bottom again. 3, minus 1. And 4, 3. And now all that remains is for me to join up these points. Remember, you're using a smooth curve. Do not use a ruler, and make sure it is clear that your graph is not flat at the bottom. And that is question 2 complete. Question 3. We need to complete the table of values for this graph here. So I'm going to use my calculator, menu button, and put it into table mode. Now, x squared alpha x squared minus 2x, using that alpha button, minus 5. Check I've put it in correctly, press equals. I don't want a second function. Now my table is starting at minus 3, finishing at 3, and it is going up in steps of 1. So my start is minus 3 equals, my end is 3, and the step is 1 as already specified, equals, and here are my y values. So I've got 10, 3, minus 2, minus 5. Move down the table, minus 6, minus 5, minus 2. Right, on the grid, draw the graph. Okay, I can do that. So, have I got to beware the scales? Yes, I do. Look, scale warning here. Look at this y scale. Make sure you understand what's going on here. And look at the x scale. Make sure you know what's going on there. Now, the x scale is quite straightforward. The y scale is slightly different to how it is sometimes. Look, that's 5. So, that's going to be 2 little squares for a unit, isn't it? So that would be, for instance, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So make sure you've understood your scale before you start plotting. Okay, minus 310. Minus 310, that's a straightforward one. Minus 2, 3. So that's going to be 6 squares up. There it is. Minus 1, minus 2. Minus 1. Well, that's not very easy, is it, on the paper? But that is where the cross must go, 4 squares. Down, 0 minus 5, there we go. 1 minus 6, now where's minus 6 going to be? It's just 2 squares below minus 5. And then 2 minus 5, and 3 minus 2. Again, that's going to be 4 squares down like that. Right, now all I've got to do now is to join those points up. Make sure you're using a smooth curve, perhaps easier if you turn your piece of paper around. And there we go. No chance of me drawing a curve with a flat bottom here, as I have got this point here at the bottom to make sure that I curve it properly. So that's good. And that's the end of that question. Now, before you move on, make sure you remember to put your calculator back into its ordinary mode, so menu 1. And now I'm back in the ordinary mode on the calculator, ready to continue with my paper. Question 4. Right, to complete the table of values for this function here, for y equals 7x minus x squared. Right, to my calculator, menu, and put it into the table mode. And now I'm going to type in that formula. So I've got 7x minus x squared. Okay, check it's right, then press equals. No second function. Right, I'm going from minus 1 to 5, and I'm going in steps of 1. So my start is minus 1 equals, my end is 5, and my steps are 1. So I just pressed equals there. And here are my table of values. Look, when x is minus 1, y is minus 8, 0, 6, 10. Right, make my way down the table with the down button. When x is 3, I've got 12, and then 12 when x is 4, and 10 when x is 5. Right, now all I've got to do is to plot these points. Now be careful, again, I've got to be careful of this scale, look. Okay, now the x scale is quite straightforward, but the y scale just wants a bit of attention here, and I can see I've got from 0 to 5 is 10 squares, so it's going to be 2 squares for each unit there. Okay, right, now let's plot the points. This point is -1, -8. So -8, right, so that's going to be, let's just make very sure I'm doing it correctly here. I'm going to make those marks there. So -1, -5, -6, -7, -8. There it is. Okay. 0, 0. I can do that one. 1, 6. So that's 1 up to 5 and 2 more squares. 2 to 10. Good. 3 to 12. 12, just a minute. 10, 11, 12. It's going to be there. 4 to 12, so that's going to be level with it. And 5 to 10. Now, what am I going to need to be careful of here when I draw the graph? Well, obviously I don't use a ruler here, and I do not want a flat top. So make sure that your curve comes round the top rather than going in a straight line there. That would be wrong, and that would lose you a mark. And that is question 4 complete. The only thing I need to remember is to put my calculator back into its ordinary mode. So menu and 1 for calculate. On we go with the rest of our paper. Question 5. Right, in question 5, I have to complete the table of values for this function here. It's a cubic this time. So to my calculator, menu, and choose the table option, which for me is number 9. Right, what is my function here? Well, it's x cubed. So alpha, get that x in, and x to the power of 3, plus an x, minus 2. Now check you've put it in correctly before you press equals. I don't want a second function. Now my table range, well, I'm starting at -2 and ending at 2, and my x's are stepping in 1s there, intervals of 1. So the start -2 equals, the end 2 equals, and the step is 1 equals. And here are the y values. So when x is -2, y is -12, then -4, then -2, then 0. Use my down button, and I see that when x is 2, y is 8. There we are. Right. On the graph, draw, on the grid, draw the graph. Right. Now, have I got to be careful of scales here? Yes, I do. Now, what is going on here with this scale on the y-axis? Let's just take a moment to sort it out. So, look at that. It's 10 squares. 10 little squares takes me up to 4. So that's obviously going to be 2 there. And so 1 is going to be 2.5 squares up. That's going to be 3. Now, if you wanted to, of course, you could take a couple of minutes and completely label up this axis here. I'm not going to do that, but I am just going to make marks there. So between 4 and 6, I'm going to mark 5. Between 6 and 8, I'm going to mark 7, just to make sure that I fully understand the scale. Now, the scale on the x-axis is that much more straightforward. Okay, now let's plot the points. -2, -12, right, so -2 along and -12. Well, that's quite straightforward because -12 is marked. Right, -1, -4. Oh, that's quite straightforward as well. Okay, 0, -2. Well, that's going to go here, halfway between 0 and -4. What's next? 0, -2, 1, 0. Right, okay, I think I can manage 1, 0. 1, 0. There it is. Okay, and then 2, 8. 2, 8. Right, so here are my points. And remember, we're going to join them with a smooth curve. So it's going to look like this. Okay, round we go. All right, now that's not quite right, is it? I seem to have missed out that point, the second point along. So I'll try again with a smooth curve going through the points. And that is the graph of y equals x cubed plus x minus 2. Now, before you move on with the rest of your paper, make sure you remember to put your calculator back into the calculate mode, which is probably number 1 on your menu. Question 6. we need to complete the table of values for y equals x cubed plus 3x. So I've got my calculator ready here. I'm going to go into the table mode and type in this function. So it is y equals x cubed, so x to the power 3 plus 3x. Check you've written it incorrectly before you press equals. Now, my table here, I don't want the second function. My table is starting from -2, ending at 2, and it's going in steps of 1. So start -2 equals end of 2 equals, and the step is 1 equals. And here are my y values. -14, -4, 0, 4, and move my way down to find what the y value is when x is 2, and the answer is it's 14. Okay, right, on the grid, draw the graph of y equals x cubed plus 3x. Now let's just have a quick look at our scales. The scale on the x-axis looks pretty straightforward. Now the scale on the y-axis, we've seen this before, I think. So 0 to 4, so that is going to be 2. And so it's 2.5 squares for each unit going up my y-axis. All right, good. Now we've sorted out the scales. Let's plot this table of values. I've got -2, -14. Right, here we go. So -2, -14. There it is, because -14 is here between -12 and -16. Now 1 minus 4. 1 minus 4. 0, 0. 1, 4. There we go. And 2, 14. All right, now smooth curve, please. Going through the points. Here it is. Okay. Do not make the mistake of drawing any straight lines between one point and the other, a smooth curve. And that is, where's it gone? There we are. That is question 6 complete. Before you can move on though, remember to put your calculator back into its ordinary mode, mode number 1 for calculate. Question 7. I need to complete the table of values for y equals x cubed minus 3x plus 2. So to my calculator, menu, and choose the table function. Right, x cubed. So alpha x and cubed. X cubed minus 3x plus 2. Check you put it in correctly before you press equals. No thank you, I don't want a second function. My table is starting at -3, ending at 3, and is in steps of 1. So start -3 equals end 3 equals step of 1 equals, and here are my y values. So when x is -3, get -16, then 0, then 4, then 2. Move my way down the table. So when x is 1, y is 0, and then 4, and then way up there at 20. Right, so that is my table of values complete. On the grid, draw the graph. Okay, now, first thing to do, check your scale. Now, they seem to like this scale where 4 is equivalent to 10 squares. I've dealt with that in the last 2 questions, so I'm getting quite used to that now. Right, -3 minus 16 is way down here. -2, 0. -1, 4. 0, 2, that's halfway between 0 and 4. 1, 0. 2, 4. And 3, 20. Right. There it is. Okay, so now a smooth curve, please. Going through the points. So round we go, smoothly round these corners. Oh, that was pretty hopeless on my computer screen. I'm going to try that again, but I'm sure it's more straightforward for you on your piece of paper. And of course, you can turn your piece of paper round to help you as you draw this smooth curve. No straight lines, do not use a ruler. And that is question 7 complete, except to remember to put your calculator back into its calculator mode. Question 8. Complete the table of values for this function here, y equals 6 over x. So this is a reciprocal function, doesn't make any difference. I put it in my calculator in the same way. So I'm going to choose the table mode. Now f of x this time is 6 over x. So I press my fraction button, 6 over and alpha close bracket to put x as the denominator. Check I put in the function correctly before I carry on. Equals. I don't need a second function. Now what's happening here? Well, my table is starting at 0.5 and finishing at 6. Okay, now what are the steps here? It's quite confusing because they've got steps of a half here, and then, look at this, steps of 1. Right, so I'm going to type in a start of 0.5, an end of 6, and now for my steps I'm going to type 0.5. Now I know I won't need all the function, there we are. I know I don't need all the values the calculator is going to produce, but it will produce all the ones I need. I just need to be slightly careful. So looking at the calculator display here, you can see x is 0.5, f of x will be 12. X is 1, 6. X is 1.5, 4. X is 2, 3. Now from now on, I need to be slightly careful because I do not need all the values that my calculator is producing. Right, on the question paper, it wants the y value when x is 3. So that's here on row 6. That's going to be a y value of 2. Now I need to move down to find when x is 4. Y will be 1.5. And now I'm moving down again. When x is 5, y will be 1.2. And then I'm not interested when x is 5.5, but I am interested in when x is 6, and y will be 1. Now, on the grid, draw the graph. Now, again, I'm going to have to be slightly careful. A few things to be careful of here. First of all, I need to be careful of my scales, so look out. Do you see how the scale on the y-axis is different to the scale on the x-axis? We don't want to mess that up. Just take a moment. The scale on the y-axis isn't too complicated. It's simply 1 there, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Right, now I also need to be careful about plotting these points because sometimes my steps are in halves and sometimes they're in ones. Should be fine, just need to be careful. X is 0.5, y is 12. Up here. X is 1, y is 6. X is 1.5, so that's here. Y is 4. X is 2, y is 3. X is 3, y is 2. X is 4, look out, because steps have changed, haven't they? And 1.5. Now, 1.5. That's 1. That's 2. So 1.5 is there. Okay, halfway between 1 and 2. Next. That was x is 4. Right, I'm on x is 5 now. I'm here. X is 5 and I need 1.2. So x is 5 and I need 1.2. Now, x is 5, 1.2. Well, that's 1. And it's 5 squares for each unit. So 1.2 is just going to be 1 square up. Now, if I was marking this, I would be looking at that point particularly to see if the student had plotted it correctly. And now 6 and 1. There we go. Now, smooth curve, please. Joining up the points. Okay, you can move your piece of paper around to help you. Here we go. Right. Well, that's not great. I've missed some of the points, but I'm doing it on a screen. I'm sure you can make a better job of it. And that is question 8 complete, except to remember to put your calculator back to its normal mode. Question 9. Right, I've got a reciprocal function again here. Y equals x plus 1 over x. So to my calculator and choose the table function. So f of x is going to be x plus, now 1 over x, I'll use my fraction function and put 1 on the numerator and x as the denominator. Let's just check I put that in correctly and then press equals. I don't want a second function. Now in this case here, we have got a start of point 2 and we do jumps of point 2 until we get to 1. So I'm going to put that blue section in first. So I'm starting at 0.2 equals, ending at 1 equals, with steps of 0.2 equals. And now I can work out or copy down those y values. 5.2, 2.9, 2.26 recurring, 2.05, and when x is 1, y is 2. Okay, right, now I'm going to put in the second lot now. So I'm going to put in from when x is 1 to when x is 5. Now I've got a jump of 1 here, and then I've got steps of 2. I'm just going to put them all in as steps of 1. And of course, I'll only need to copy down some of the y values that my calculator produces. So I'm going to press the cancel button. It takes me back to my function there. The function hasn't changed. I still don't want a second function. This time I'm starting when x is 1 equals, ending when x is 5 equals, and I'm going to do steps of 1 equals. Okay, when x is 1, y is 2. That's good, I already knew that. Now the second row here tells me that when x is 2, y is 2.5. Now the next thing I need to fill in on my table is when x is 4. So when x is 4, y is 4.25. Okay, and now I want when x is 5. So when x is 5, I've got y is 5.2. Good. Right, so I finished with the calculator now. So before I forget, I'll put it into its normal mode. Right, back to the question here. Now I've got to complete on the grid, draw the graph. Right, now let's have a careful look at our scales again, as usual. Now, I notice that I've got the same scale on the y-axis as I do on the x-axis. Well, that's a first. And I also notice that the scale isn't all that tricky because I've just got 10 squares for each unit. So each little square is 0.1. So that's helpful. Right, my first point is x is 0.2. So that's going to be here. And y is 5.2. So 0.2 all the way up to 2 little squares above the 5. 0.4, okay, that's here, and 2.9, right. 0.4, 2.9, that's there. Okay. Right. 0.6, 2.26 recurring. Right, well 0.6 is here. Now 2.2 is, let's zoom in a bit for you. 2.2 is here. Okay, that's 2.3. So 2.26 is basically 2.25, isn't it? So I'm going to plonk my point there. Okay, right. Next. 0.8, 2.05. Right, 0.8. Now 2.05. So there's 2, and there's 2.1, just one square above. So I'm going to go half a square up there. And I would think that the examiners would expect you to plot that point pretty accurately. 1, 2, 1, 2. Even I can manage that one. There we go. All right, now the steps are changing for the x, aren't they? So now I'm doing x is 2 and 2.5. There we are. X is 4, another jump there, and 4 1/4. Right, so 4 1/4. So that's going to be 2.5 squares above the 4 there. Good. And now x is 5 and 5.2. So I've had to be quite careful plotting there. Okay, and now I need to join these up with a smooth curve. Of course, you can move your piece of paper around to help you do that. Here we go. It's going to go like that, and then through those points there. Brilliant. Okay, and that, it seems to me, perhaps I should have carried that on up there. There we go. That is question 9 done. The most complicated question, I think. And now that is the end of the question. So please do hit like if you found the film useful. If you've got any questions, do leave them in the comments, and of course I'll respond. And if you did find the film useful, please give me some positive feedback in the comments. It gives me some positive feedback, which is good for me, and it helps the channel too. I hope you found the film useful. See you in the next film.